So, the name of my talk today is What's Going to Kill You and How Can You Stop That? After seeing the last talk with the red teamer, skills for a red teamer, the answer for everybody here today will be death by PowerPoint, because I didn't put any of the nice fancy GIFs and memes and cat videos on that. So original talk started giving like a few years ago, Geek's Guide to Healthy Living, mostly talking about the perils of modern life and society. I'm Ben White, I'm half Jack. I am not an expert, I'm not a doctor or a lawyer or play one on TV or anything like that. But I've been around for a while and I'm paying attention, so a few things that are right. And really, you know, I just want to be healthy for a long time. Forever would be nice, but we'll see about it. Okay? So, what's going to kill you? Everything. Juice? I don't know. So this is pretty much standard size age group. All right. So the answer is probably you are going to kill you. If we look at death rates for various age groups, for 0 to 34 group, right, which only has about a 0.05% chance of dying each year. So that's a 1 in 2,000 chance, right? That's, if you look at the types of things that happen, actually this is 1 through 4 and 6. The fifth one was actually congenital conditions, which is pretty much right down there in the 0 to 2 age range. So I knocked it out to sort of see the other one, and you see that the things that kill people at this age are mostly based upon decisions that they make or other folks around them make. As far as that, the poisonings is not like a whole bunch of wives getting rid of their husbands. That's how this particular set of data classified most drug overdoses as a poisoning type of thing. And of course, these are from worldlifeexpectancy.com, 2014 data, sorry. Of course, we expect that second number may be the first number for current years because of increased overdose deaths. So, but like I said, a lot of the road traffic accidents relate to conditions that either texting and driving or inattention or sleepiness, things like that, a lot of which is, again, under folks' control. Suicide, homicide rate, pretty high, other injuries, falls, bike accidents, things like that, extreme sports. So most folks in this group this year probably not going to die. So that's a good thing. But if you were to die now, like I said, most of the things that are going to do it would be sort of in your range. Right? If we jump forward to another set, right, if you make it out of that 0 to 34 range, up to 65 or below 65, I'd say, 0.39%, that's about a 1 in 250 chance. Right? And I didn't do it by 10-year stacks, basically, but it is pretty much a straight line. It's the more, the longer you live, the higher chance you're going to die that year, right? Again, if you look at the things that are killing folks of this age, you can once see, again, it's stuff you're doing now is going to kill you later. As far as lung cancer, heart disease, poisonings, again, that was a fairly consistent one. Even probably more so in this age range. It's actually, more folks, and again, it's increasing a little bit more in those for, I guess, a variety of social reasons, economic reasons, stuff like that. So, again, like I said, you die now because of the things you do, and then you die later because of the things you're doing now. It's kind of the picture. After that, 2.66% per year, 65 plus. And of course, like I said, this is everybody up to the 90-year-olds. And the top 10, you start to see a little bit of other cancers besides lung cancer, which of course is mostly a self-inflicted one. Colorectal cancer is a big killer, again, sort of related to what you're doing now. Catches up with you later. Right? So sorry to be so cheerful about that, but that's sort of the thing. Now, a lot of these are classified in the area of what we call, affluenza or metabolic syndrome or, Western disease, because these are often related to lifestyle, food, substances, tobacco, alcohol, not treating, the high blood pressure that results from being overweight and smoking and drinking, those types of things. So, why is it that you're the most likely, ultimate cause of death? Well, we got a problem. The way humans developed, right, evolutionary speaking, is that we had close-knit unit, the family and tribe. No artificial lights, so we slept when it was dark. Right? We were very active outside, sort of making a living, and it was up at daytime and in the cave back when it got dark outside and the tigers came out. Stress was typically acute. Hey, there's a lion trying to eat me. Sometimes sometimes the lion eats you, and sometimes you eat the lion. Lots of variety in diet. Right? If you're lucky enough to get meat, you can do that. Grubs are tasty, but a lot of stuff that didn't run away from you when you tried to eat it. So a lot of plants, roots, berries, things like that. And lots of sugar and huge batches of fat generally didn't, just as convenient as sitting on the rack when you, go to the store. So today we have a little bit different situation. We live in a world where we're largely individualistic, right? So we don't have sort of that human touch around us all the time. Intellectual stress rather than existential stress or existence stress, I guess. Artificial light, fun devices to play with, people to see, things to do, so lots of sleep. Right? Most times making a living, especially for this group, involves sitting in front of a screen. Right? And then we quit doing that and we have fun by sitting in front of a screen. Right? Inside under artificial lights. Right? And then all the stuff we eat is food-like substances that have lots of fat, lots of salt, lots of chemicals in them that make them shelf life longer, things like that. So, we live in an environment, have a world that's not great for sort of our natural instincts to hear. Plus, we even have counter stuff is that we crave the sugar and fat because we couldn't get it in the past, and now we can get all that we want, but our craving hasn't scaled back down for that. And like I said, we have sugary drinks, although it's great to see that there is sort of a rollback on soda. The use of drinking of soda, the amount of drinking is going way down on that. Again, sort of because, soda is the new cigarette kind of thing. The sugary drinks has got a bad rap, and people are doing other things, water and, I guess the energy drinks and coffee and things like that, with maybe not as much sugar, although if you look at Starbucks, it's got a lot of fat, a lot of sugar, and a little bit of coffee in there. So still people like that. Right? And it tastes good, and our brains are wired to like that taste. Right? All right, so that's the problem. How do we address it? What are we going to do? Well, what we really need to avoid, a few things. Okay? One of the big ones, and this is sort of, I won't say cutting edge stuff, but more and more research is done in this area. It's a big thing. Is feed your microbiota, your bacteria that live in your gut, on your skin, all around you. Reduce stress when you can. I said it's a big thing. It's again working our regular jobs and having deadlines and too many things going on is when we stress. But things that we can do to help deal with that stress, mitigate that stress, is going to help us. Put down the phone, right? When you're driving at night, if you don't want to have, mental health issues, be depressed, stay away from Facebook. All of these things are pretty much scientifically proven that the phone is can be a good tool, but also can negatively impact the life in a lot of ways. And finally, there's a few stop doing that's that I'll talk about. Again, a lot of these are hard to do because of the whole nature of psychology and the desires that we have, the environments that we have, and that sort of thing. I'll just hit what I'm going to say. All right. Get moving. Exercise is going to fix a lot of problems. Okay? Eating right up there with it. Hits in multiple areas. Okay? Get more sleep. Everybody talks, like, stayed up late, I had to work late on a project, I woke up early, couldn't sleep last night because I'm worried. So all of these things you're going to see kind of get wrapped up and around each other, and if we fix one or try to fix one, then the others are going to fight against us, or maybe we'll be able to make headway on those as well. Relax. That stress. Stress is killing you, believe it. Be more social, and media doesn't count. Right? You've heard of pheromones. They're the ones that animals interact with, indicate sexual availability in a lot of mammals, stuff like that. We have those too, and we respond to them. So being around other people in close proximity helps us socially, but also just sort of gives our brain what it's expecting to hear and calms us down. And that's physical proximity important. Okay? And don't kill yourself, either on accident or on purpose. So again, lots of scope covered there. Drugs, are definitely one. Intentional harm, but also, texting and walking in front of a car, or somebody in the car texting and running over you. Have to be careful for those kind of things. So, I want to hit a point about inflammation. It's sort of related to several of these types of things. Our bodies are wonderful, self-healing, self-programming, biological wonder machines. One of the ways they get stuff done is they do chemical signaling, and if we, burn ourselves or we get physical damage or an infection, the body responds with inflammation, and basically sort of cascade of chemical release, and it helps the body muscle defenses tell it where it needs to send white blood cells to attack pathogens and all that sort of thing. The problem is that the inflammation can sort of run rampant. A chronic low level of it will often basically damage the tissues that it's supposed to help and protect. And so by reducing inflammation, we can sort of head off problems down the line. And one of the things, going back to the microbiome, is that a damaged or reduced microbiome population and diversity is being implicated more and more in chronic inflammation. It's basically, it moderates our immune response, but also when it's failing, it actually, the things in the gut can go wrong and cause inflammation, which inflammation leads, like I said, to the plaque in the arteries and to high blood pressure, diabetes, all types of things. Well, actually, I have a list of those. So all of those good things is inflammation is implicated in their happening to you. And that's why so many people often have several of these, is they do sort of feed on each other, but there may be this base cause of inflammation that's sort of firing off a lot of the different processes at once. So, stress, like I said, we talked about stress of fight or flight. Yes, sir.
Going back to the microbiome.
Yes.
Do you know anything about the state of efforts to investigate and treat various illnesses by transplanting?
Yes, actually, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. I sure am. Yeah. So, specific stress is good. It powers us up to overcome stuff. It, the classic fight, flight. Also, freeze is sometimes a third F there. But that one's not nearly as adaptive as those in critical situations. But in most of our life, we don't have too much of those. Instead, we have the chronic stress. So we're not facing a tiger, we're facing a bad boss, right? We're facing, somebody that cut us off in traffic, right? Facing, a life partner that doesn't line up, their goals don't quite line up with ours. So those types of stresses, they sort of trigger the same pathways, but they don't sort of come and go quickly. They don't sort of spike and then we get back to an equilibrium. They just sort of stand around and mess things up for us a lot. So the constant stress will suppress the immune system. It actually weakens bones because we're actually pulling calcium out of bones to get all our nerves fired up for the attack. And, it decreases libido, leads to depression, makes it hard to sleep. I didn't have room to list all of these. And one of the things that the research that sort of led to this, in a certain degree, it's kind of obvious, but scientifically, a longitudinal study of civil service employees in the British government, they basically tracked and equalized for age and weight and all the things. And what they found out was that if you were a peon, your health and life expectancy was worse than if you were a supervisor, because the supervisors had much more control over their work and life stress events than just somebody that had to do what they were told. And I think this actually goes back into the 50s, and I think the 50s into the 60s. And it's been, basically the data has been found again and again in all the places we look at it. If you're in a high stress environment and you feel like you don't have control, that's that chronic stress that just eats away at all the health parts of your life. So that's why it's really important to sort of do what you can to decrease that as much as possible. And it's just like information security risk. The risk is there. You're never going to eliminate it. You're going to mitigate it as much as you can to the point where you can accept the remaining or transfer it to somebody else. Unfortunately, we can't transfer our stress necessarily to somebody else. And of course, that stress also leads to inflammation, which wraps everything back around. And of course, I think I already said about it can make you depressed. So, tons of seminars, tons of stuff, lots of actually proven ways of reducing stress, and then there's the ones that we actually use. So, stressed out, what do we do? Go to the gun range. That's a pretty healthy way, all right? Turning to alcohol, drugs, other sort of negative social interactions, stuff like that. Not the way to reduce stress. Generally, they're going to cause more stress. Exercise is a great stress reducer. Right? Eating right is, again, getting more sleep, right? Reduces overall stress. Right? Being social. Right? So we've seen this list before. It's the stuff that we said, hey, these are overall things for reducing stress, for getting better sleep, for all the things. This is kind of the stuff to do. Right? Gut bacteria, right, the microbiome, have a impact on your mental health. Right? If you get particular bacteria in your system, they produce drugs, or hormones, I should say, that actually lift mood. So all day inside, clean environment, working in front of the computer, you think you're great. You need to get out and breathe in a little dirt and pet a dog, and yeah, he just lick that spot with the same tongue he uses to clean his butt, and that gets all over you and in you and everything like that. So these the microbiome again is just hitting again and again. All of these areas are influenced by the bacteria we have inside us. Stress reduction, like I said, reducing drug intake, generally not increasing it is better. Right? Sure, there are prescription drugs for depression and anxiety and stuff like that, and those, definitely not saying get rid of those. Caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, any illicit substance that you inject or could be injected, we'll say, that scale. We wouldn't want to use cocaine, opioids, things like that. Okay? Not enough solid research on whether marijuana actually may be a good one here. Of course, there's plenty of experimentation going on, so we'll get that answer sooner or later. Talk with a professional if necessary, right? Even if it's a professional, chat bot on the internet. Some of those have actually been shown to be as effective as, a regular therapist, and just having to be able to talk it out. It doesn't have to be a person on the other end for that. Right? And again, it's that control issue is very much a thing from the research from stressful work environments. As much as you can, simplify, get on a program so that tardiness is not compounding stress down the line, and as much as you can, sort of feel like you've got your life running according to the way you want to. And again, social media, the enemy of mental health. It's that is a pretty much scientific fact. Depends a lot on how you use it, what you look at, stuff like that. But one of the increases in teen suicide is related to social media, cyberbullying, things like that. And that is again, why would somebody kill themselves over things that people said? But that's their world. There's a lot of their personality tied up into the validation, that external validation, and they might not be. We might not have to get them completely away from social media, but a lot of teens would benefit from realizing intrinsic worth versus that validation that has to come from how many likes they get. So, all right, so talked about stress, talked about diet, all right? Michael Pollan authored several different books ranging a lot of different subjects. Many of them are sort of related to plants and nature and things like that. Eat food. Sounds simple, but a lot of the stuff that you buy at the grocery store is food-like, but not really food. Right? Not too much. Again, we're better if we don't consume tons and tons of calories, even though that's what our brains want us to do. Mostly plants. Right? A lot of people, heavy advocates for a vegetarian lifestyle, and that's fine and grand for them. We pretty much probably evolved for a wide variety of substances, meat and lots of plants. And our body will see, when we get talking more about the microbiome, we'll see that this is really good advice, even though at the time it probably wasn't something on his mind. But mostly plants feeds our microbiome what it needs to proliferate and protect us. And like I said, this is very close to the diet of what pre-industrial humans, stretching back, at least to the beginning of agriculture, were pretty much eating. Before then, it was much more hunter-gatherer, lots of berries, lots of small animals to big animals, depending on how good a hunter you were, and lots of plant-based material. So, we already talked about this microbiome. It has a huge impact on overall health, both physical health, mental health, feedback loops out the wazoo on all the different things. All right. So, we're going to talk about it some more. Don't be afraid of fat. Like I said, there's a huge diet industry. And everybody's got a new book and got a new plan, and high fat, high carbs, high protein, low this, low that. But we need all sorts of stuff. Fat is a vital component of cell membranes and building neurons. And don't be afraid of it, although most of it probably needs to come from plant sources. Lack of sleep tied to weight gain. It disrupts the hormonal balance of food and makes us not produce as much of the hormone that tells us to quit eating and all that sort of stuff. Stress in there too. If you want to lose weight, it's going to be on the diet side more than the exercise side. Right? Both are important, but getting the calories down is going to be the input fix rather than the output fix. Right? And be very wary of crash diets. Right? Our body adapts to stress. Dieting is, if you cut calories generally below 1,000 for the average size person, your body thinks you're starving. It's evolved a technique to deal with that. It says, I'm going to shut down a lot of stuff, and I'm going to figure out how to get every calorie out of this that they're giving me. And then eventually you start eating normal again, but your body can do really, really good job of sucking those calories out. So it, once you go through that repeatedly, you really sort of tune your body up to do exactly what you don't want it to do in most cases. So let's talk about what should we eat. Now, again, a bazillion things. Websites on the internet, you can search the scientific papers and say eat this and eat this and eat this. But I think there's a simple way. Eat what we evolved eating, right? And that means that we eat a lot of different things. Okay? And that doesn't mean changing from McDonald's to Jack in the Box to Arby's this week. Okay? Lots of different substances. We don't need to eat for calories. We can get calories all we want today, but we do need to eat for nutrition. So that means we need a lot of different things. We need nuts, we need fruits, vegetables, some meat, lots of different things that are going to have a lot of nutrient chemicals in it that builds our body, but also feeds that microbiome. Right? So generally looking for unmessed around withness. One time I was giving this talk and somebody says, we need to develop an application that you scan a food and it'll tell you, whether it's one that you should eat or not. I'm like, hey, if it's got a barcode on it, it's probably not something that you want to be eating. There's an exception to that. But yeah, generally the sort of the closer to its original form, that's where we need to eat. And if we sort of hit in that area, we don't have to worry about a ton of the details later on. Okay? And of course, one of the big things that this leads to is that we're going to try to avoid highly processed food, which today, the thing that they pushed into our diet because it's nice and cheap and bulk and we can charge money for it good, is processed grains. So we got flour in all of our buns and breads and sugar in our drink and cookies and crackers and M&Ms, and that's you take something, you start with something. If you don't replace it with a chemical somewhere down the line because it's a little bit cheaper or lasts longer on the shelf, you pretty much process out everything that's good about the original food by the time it reaches the package.
Just to add on to that,
yes.
If you're a little trick for finding less processed foods when you go grocery shopping, if you stay on the perimeter of the grocery stores and avoid the interior aisles, a lot of the foods on the perimeter are not processed.
That's right. They're very close to the source type thing. And then you can add to that the freezer aisle down the middle if you hit the right things.
Right. But just as a general rule, that helps you avoid eating lots of processed.
And avoiding temptation, which is a psychological component of, hey, that food looks really good, and I want to try some of this new. But yes, thank you for doing that. That is, like I said, shop on the outside ring of the supermarket to avoid highly processed foods. Generally, the more color the food has got in there, the better. Again, we can look at variety. That doesn't mean that we have to take every potato out of our diet and put sweet potatoes in there because it's brighter, orange and color. But sometimes we might do more sweet potatoes than regular potatoes, or we might want to do more variety of salad greens than broccoli or something like that. Although broccoli is fine too. Beans, right? Beans have a lot of chemicals or a lot of components of them that are extremely healthy, and along with fruits, right, and nuts and whole grains, these have, pretty much all of that, but these especially have fiber in them, multiple types of fiber. This fiber goes to the stomach, goes to the small intestine, hits the colon. right? This is where the majority of our microbiome lives. These fibers feed those bugs. Those bugs then process them into the chemicals that do all sorts of good things for us.
What about dried beans?
Dried beans? Oh yeah, they're great. Yeah. So dried beans, they don't have to be fresh. Dried beans in a pot.
Go as far down as the baked beans.
The baked beans, they have some good stuff still in them, but generally I would recommend a little bit further back, fewer calories added in the form of sugar and fat. So, my tips: save money and eat better. Right? Frozen is pretty much as good, sometimes better for vegetables. Right? So you can get frozen broccoli, frozen greens, frozen fruits and berries, peaches and strawberries and stuff like that. They're a lot easier to manage than fresh, typically a little bit cheaper too. And unless it's something that especially needs the texture of fresh, use the frozen version. Dried beans, whole wheat, whole grains, all sorts of things are cheap. Dried beans you can find pretty much anywhere. For grains, sometimes you have to find the specialty store, maybe does a health food store, or I don't know all the sort of trendy market things, but some of them probably do have box grains. But we're avoiding stuff that has had all of the healthy parts of the grain sort of shaved off so that it'll sit on the shelf for a year and still be good. We want the natural fats that are in there. We want the complex outer sheath that sort of protects that seed from being bumped around in the real world, where that's the fiber, and the fat part has got the rich nutrients, the bran part, outer sheath. So we want whole grains. Like I said, those things, the fiber in them, again, is feeding that microbiome and getting us better off. Use a slow cooker. Like I said, a lot of people, don't, they watch the TV shows, and there's 15 dozen ingredients, and they chop them up, and you have to do the special technique and all that. And some people are having great fun with the meal delivery systems, which is, if you do those, that's fine. They're a little expensive, but the result is pretty good. Like I said, they have fresh ingredients, a lot of variety, so if you want to spend the money on that, knock yourself out. A slow cooker can cook up, bean stews, chili, soups. Soups are great because you can put a lot of different things in those varieties. And depending on whether you're a person that can eat the same thing for a week or whether you need a different thing every day, you just have to size your slow cooker batch to the appropriate level. Make something that's going to last for 3 helpings and or 10 helpings and freeze a helping each one, and then pull one out of the freezer only once a week so you don't get tired of it. Or just hog out in front of black-eyed peas with a ham hock in it for a whole week, and then move on to something new depending on your particular taste. Packing your lunch avoids stress of having to get out and drive somewhere and get in line. It saves a whole lot of money. Rather than spending $5, $6, $8 a day, you can pocket that. Plus, you get to control the stuff. You get to bring the good, healthy stuff instead of having to sort of try to pick the least worst thing at the fast food place. Or maybe worse, you get your variety as far as, I'm going to eat everything on the buffet and see how it tastes. So, if you have old favorites, just slip some of the new healthy stuff in there. Soup is a great example. Chili, these work great with an addition of cooked grains. So just cook up some wheat, basically treat it like you would brown rice, and then take a scoop of that and throw that into your bowl of chili, throw it into your soup, soup from a can, anything like that. So just add, instead of using rice as your base, cook up some quinoa and pour whatever you're going to, your Chinese on top of that instead of noodles or white rice. So try to mix it up. So here's microbiome, our bugs. Okay? So me is really a we. There's been a figure kicked around that there are 10 times more bacteria cells in our bodies than human cells. And that's probably true if you discount red blood cells, which basically 80% of our cells, because they're tiny, don't replicate or have no nucleus, clear thing. But we're talking hundreds of trillions of bacteria, viruses, microfungi, something like that on this. So really, we're kind of a combo organism. That's how we evolved, and that's how our body's expecting to work. And if we don't have the right microbiome, then bad things happen. So what does it do for us? One of the most things is that people think bugs are bad. If you get bacteria, you got to kill them. Spray Lysol on them, whatever. Drink that cocktail, kill them all. But the fact is that we have environments for bacteria, and if we don't have good guys living there, then that's open territory for the bad guys to come. Right? So is having a lot of bacteria well colonized all over our body, a lot of variety because we got a lot of ecological niches, so we need to have one that can handle this acid situation, this sunlight situation, that sort of thing. They regulate the human immune response to a great deal. They can ramp it up or tamp it down. Basically our stomach and intestines are sort of our first line of defense on immune response. And we see, again, when we have a poor microbiome, we see increases in all types of things such as allergies, asthma, arthritis, a lot of these things that are immune system related. And there's actually some really interesting stuff that autism, there's been anecdotal evidence and research done that sometimes autistic kids get better when they're given antibiotics. And when they first saw that, they're like, how the heck could that be related? But now they're thinking it's tied into the immune response and the other factors of the microbiome, because the antibiotics change the microbiome in the body. Right? So it's actually fascinating that the bacteria in the colon, they generate a fatty acid that is used as fuel by the cells in the cell wall. So they're making food for the body that's closest to that. So those cells actually don't pick up food from the bloodstream quite as the same as others. It produces a chemical called GABA, which is necessary for us to sleep well, get really deep sleep. 90% of serotonin, and serotonin is basically the happy molecule. It elevates our mood, makes us more optimistic, and sort of just happier. And 90% of that actually comes from gut bacteria. So like I said, they're really tied into the hormone response for satiety, we're saying we've eaten enough, insulin impacts, so poor microbiome can make diabetes or cause diabetes or be influenced with that. Mood, like I said, if you get the right bacteria in there, you're happier and less depressed than people that don't have that bacteria in there.
Is that because they're breaking down like the precursors to production?
No, actually they're like a little chemical factory in there. They're basically fermenting these compounds in the fiber that we eat. They're fermenting them and basically chunking out just like hundreds of different chemicals. And depending on the balance of what type of species of bacteria there, they can produce more of one than the other, and that may be implicated in, like I said, everything from obesity to insulin resistance to depression. So, yeah, like I said, they're just like pumping out the real stuff and precursors as well. They control gene expression in hosts. This was like mind-blowing. The chemicals they produce, methylanes and stuff like that, can actually attach onto DNA in cells and turn off or turn on parts of DNA. And a lot of people think, oh, my daddy died at 60, I'm going to die at 60. Well, there's a big part of that, in that genes do have a big influence on lifespan health. But this is actually a good microbiome can basically do the best parts of your genes rather than letting the worst parts express. And the intestines, of course, are hooked sort of straight up to the brain through the vagus nerve, and it's a two-way street. they can send messages up to the brain, and the brain can send messages down to the gut. And so stress can make your, stomach not behave right, and stuff that's going in the stomach can, increase mood and, throw a bunch of serotonin on that vagus nerve, and that lets you get happy. And if we ever had any doubt about whether this was true, we should have figured it out about 60 years ago when farmers started using lots of antibiotics at a sort of a maintenance dose on animals. And why do we give antibiotics to animals? Anybody know?
Just to keep the herd healthy.
That's a little bit of it, but the big thing is they get fatter faster. By giving them antibiotics, they get fatter faster, which means more money to it. Now, there is a certain degree of basically the diet we try to feed them is bad for their intestines, so we've got to give them antibiotics to keep them from having ulcers that kill them. But the change in the bacteria somehow means that they get more calorie usage out of the food given to them. And so now we're sort of figuring out, this thing we've been seeing for 60 years, now we know why. The other interesting thing on this one is that, as you said about transplants, they can take bacteria, or basically a fecal transplant from a fat mouse and put it in a skinny mouse, and he gets fat. Take from the skinny mouse, put it in the fat mouse, he loses weight. Okay? Take it from the anxious mice, put them in the calm mice, they get anxious. So sort of direct translation on mice. In humans, we're not to that stage yet for the general, but there are a couple of things that...
Are there any human trials?
Actually, I don't think they're really in past, I think they're past trials. There's
the treatment for C. diff.
Yeah, that's what I was fixing to say, is C. diff has, for years and years been a really hard, difficult disease to attack. And now they're finding that usually like one fecal transplant from a healthy donor to a person with C. diff, which is a bacteria that can infect the system, and they're cured within weeks. And it's not all sort of sunshine and roses. It's a more complex system. And right now, a lot of people are thinking, we got this thing licked. We just find the right bacteria and we put it in there. But there's Helicobacter, what is it? Prinum? I don't know. Maybe somebody knows this. The H. pylori is the bacteria that causes ulcers. They said, it's not just like drinking too much hot sauce or stress. It's actually an infection of a particular bacteria that causes people to get ulcers. And so in the United States, what they have been doing, they have been in an extinction eradication campaign to get rid of it. Well, now they're saying, guess what? In children, this helps, the immune response work in a particular way. It basically prevents asthma. It reduces allergic reactions, stuff like that. It's only once we get, up into the 30s and 40s that it actually starts causing problems. And of course, evolutionary speaking, once we're in our 30s and 40s, we're not, passing genes on to new kids most of the time. And so we've sort of outlived our usefulness. It doesn't matter if it kills us at 40 because it got us through our 20s so we could pop out some babies. And it's going to be a pretty complex thing, but there is a lot of work and a lot of really sort of optimistic work that being able to sort of custom frame the microbiome will help people with various diseases and also make drug companies $1 bazillion. On the other hand, if you eat right and keep your microbiome diverse, then you may just be able to tell the chemical or the medical companies to go stuff it. Okay? So how do we improve it? One thing is avoid unnecessary antibiotics, which is just about too late for most of us. Like I said, we've probably all gone through multiple series of antibiotics over the years, and that has definitely sort of willowed out the variety in our microbiome. Okay? There's also some evidence that possibly chemicals in our food, preservatives and staleness, extenders and stuff like that, They may be working on the microbiome in negative ways as well. Right? Fiber, like I said, we've got to feed those fellows. Right? One of the things that's a problem when we don't get enough fiber is, like I said, the balance of bacteria sort of gets off, and we don't sort of have those that are generating the healthy, fatty acids that feed the cells, and it releases something called leaky gut syndrome. And it basically just means that the cells sort of aren't as healthy in the lining of the colon. They're not really sort of tightly put together, and are really vigorously doing their jobs of moving chemicals out, in and out, and stuff like that. And so they sort of get more permeable, and chemicals that the bacteria that are living in there, those chemicals get processed out to the bloodstream and basically sort of provoke a systemic inflammation. Again, that inflammation that's causing all kinds of trouble. So if we get a good, healthy set of bacteria in there and feed them good, then that's going to do a lot to make less health, or less stressed, and have less inflammation and all of these other things that lead to other types of diseases. Fermented foods, so kimchi, sauerkraut,
beer.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Yogurt, kefir. The beer one, probably not so much, but maybe. I haven't actually seen any research on that. But beer, of course, has got the, you may have to just do the non-alcoholic beer to get the full bacteria rate.
Right. Hops are a vegetable.
That's true. Cake has eggs in it. So, get dirty. A lot of these bacteria are in the environment. We just need to absorb them. We can interpret that two different ways, because we do pick up bacteria from other people. And if we have certain, close contact with them, we will exchange bacteria. And they can get some of ours, we can get some of theirs. But mostly it's, bacteria in the dirt and on plants and things like that. If we were growing our own food, at the house, you could get a lot of it just by lightly washing your food and eating it. But of course today, there's sort of a big danger from taking food from anywhere and not really sort of getting it clean. But if you do grow your own food, realize that, hey, you can just wipe that apple off on your shirt and eat it. You don't have to sterilize it in Clorox before you bite into it. Pet a dog, or I said, man, animals, livestock, they poop everywhere, and you get it on you, get it in you, and you're sharing some of the bacteria they're doing. So that, like I said, this is counterintuitive. You think, hey, my kid is allergic to stuff. I want to keep them away from pets. But if you get get a pet, the immune system is tamped down because the body has got that inside of the microbiome working from there. So exercise, that's a good one too. Okay. All right, so I have way underestimated how much stuff I've got to cover. Okay. This last one is too late for all of y'all, but something to consider is, get born vaginally and breastfeed. Breast milk has a substance in it that the baby can't digest. And you would think, why on earth would evolution put a substance that the baby can't digest in milk? It's going down there to the small or the lower intestine and feeding the microbiome. So those bacteria do it. If you have a C-section, they're actually looking at taking swabs from the mother's vagina and sort of painting the baby with it so that it gets those bacteria down in its stomach, and it sort of gets populated that. If you don't, C-section babies get basically populated by skin bacteria, and they don't do the same jobs as those intestinal ones. And you can get a microbiome transplant, which basically is fecal matter from another person. Right? And they don't do it the nice way. Basically, they freeze it, and they put it in a pill and give it to you.
You say you can get that? I mean,
Yeah, that's a pretty standard treatment right now.
They had like people practicing, they'll come on in, we'll.
Yeah. So used to they actually sort of did like a reverse enema, but then they figured out that, hey, they could just put it up at the top as long as people can swallow it. So. All right, so So I have a whole set of slides on sleep, but let me just tell you the short thing. Short sleep is equal to short life. There's a great new book about that, about why we sleep. Sort of sums up a whole bunch of research over the last 20 years. And it's a case of the stress and sleep all sort of combined together cause a lot of these diseases. There's all sorts of different things. Okay, daylight savings time, 8% shift in traffic accidents. This next week, since we're falling back and people get more sleep than their bodies sort of tuned into, have an 8% reduction in traffic accidents. Next spring, we're going to make people get up an hour early. Traffic accidents that next week are going to increase by 8%. It's just clockwork. So what to do better? Get out in the sun early in the morning. Okay. Get on the schedule, just like Mama said. Okay. Exercise, but not right before bedtime. Caffeine, other drugs, especially opioids and stimulants, mess it up. Dark, cool, not too quiet to sleep at night. And that cell phone, keeping your mind awake, the blue light coming from it, of course, unless you got that turned off, is telling it, say, hey, it's daytime, you need to be alert. So it's counteracting so what should be happening. Of course, again, if you can sort of keep it dark in dark times, that would be good as well. Yeah. And don't let the phone wake you up in the middle of the night.
Is the wavelength of the light affected here? I mean, blue is more disturbing than red.
Yes, the blue is much more disturbing than red. That's what the melatonin in our brains sort of react to, is that blue light. So if you do blue filters, they got the blue glasses that basically laser protective glasses also filter out the blue light that you would get from your phone or TV or something like the computer.
The apps also shift like twilight or.
Yeah, there's apps ones that I don't know how effective those are, how much they can really tone it down, but I definitely do. And like I said, I don't know quite how much it's effective. So let's see. I got a whole bunch on exercise, but guess what? People know that they should exercise and stuff like that. Let me jump out to the oops. Yeah, so I was going to talk about exercise. But, yeah. So in general, closing remarks, control chronic conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, directly with drugs. Also, get your microbiome healthy so that these things will sort of maybe take care of themselves. Okay? Get bored, it's great for your mental health. The cell phone, smartphone has sort of eliminated boredom, but a lot of great ideas, stress relief, sort of mending the raveled sleeve of care happens when we're bored. Okay? Make nice with nature. Not only do you get out there and get dirty, but again, scientific research shows that people that are in hospital rooms that face a park get better 2 days sooner than ones that face the cement wall across the way. So we like nature. We're built for being in it. Okay? Also get vaccinated. Shingles and adult diseases as well as kid stuff. Okay? Stop smoking, using drugs, texting or driving, overusing alcohol, and eating sugar. And like I said, really should say sugar / white flour, because those are the things that they just don't have anything for that microbiome. And I know, let's see, skip a few over for our stop smoking. Everybody knows we should stop smoking, so we'll leave that one. Nicotine replacements, better than nothing, but nicotine is a constrictor, so it constricts your blood vessels and all little parts of your body that need little tiny blood vessels. So like the spine, the disc in the spine, and your eyes, and pancreas, and all those kind of things. Opioids today, we have a huge spike in deaths. They're almost as dangerous as tobacco, percent-wise of users. Right? So we think we're just having a fit about everybody overdosing this. Only problem is this happens now, and smoking happens in 30 years as far as killing. But they're basically, this is just now getting percentage-wise of people who use cigarettes versus abuse opioids. They're almost up to the point where tobacco percent-wise. In trying to do this stuff, go back to basic project planning. What's my target? Eat right, get more exercise, all that. And, what do we need to do? Y'all develop computer programs and make, programs for doing this, that, and the other. So make one for getting healthy as well. And then I had a slide about the zombie cell apocalypse, but I'm kind of out of time. I'll give you the quick version. Usually our cells replicate, and then, eventually they finish replicating and they die. Senescent cells are ones that they quit doing what they're supposed to do, but they won't go ahead and die off. They're basically zombie cells, and they're happening in our body all the time. They release chemicals that prevent the body from killing them off. So these chemicals irritate everybody around them, leading to inflammation and stuff like that. And chitines and chemotines and extracellular matrix proteases. And by the time you get old, they're making sometimes like 20% of tissue, the liver, pancreas, things like that. And if we can kill them off, the tissue kind of reverts back and starts behaving normally. And they've done this with mice. They basically had, old, puny mice. They gave them chemicals that cleaned it off, and they started, growing thick, luxurious hair. They started, walking around like super mice. And, senolytics is the compounds. These are natural compounds and, man-made drugs. And it may be that the chemicals, if we eat right, we may get some of these in our food, which sort of helps us get healthy. Because everybody's always said, you eat healthy, you stay healthy, but why is that? Well, now we're finding out. Feeding our microbiome and giving us chemicals that sort of regulate, maybe senescence of cells. I'm sorry I ran long, but if anybody has any questions, I will happily talk to you. Okay. So, but anybody have questions?
You get pills in the drugstore, they're supposed to have bacterial culture in it. What's the difference between that and a fecal transplant?
Those are typically sort of an abbreviated view, if they have them. Those are basically in the supplement aisle, which means that there's no guarantee they actually have anything in them besides starch filling. Some of them, some of the more reputable ones do, but they are, basically 1, 2, 3 species rather than like, 100 different species that you would get through a fecal transplant. So.
But they did a fecal transplant, they're just looking for some healthy being to take as a donor, or can they be more specific?
Right now, they're looking just kind of a healthy person to transplant it into somebody that has C. diff. Is the primary, purpose right now. With the mice, they're doing a little bit more experimentation. They're just getting to human trials for sort of focus on that. Like I said, the C. diff treatment has been so effective that, like I said, I don't really think it's in human. I'm not sure they had to do human trials for it since it was a natural substance, so to speak. Yes.
Any connection to microbiome and improvements in cancer treatment?
The senescent stuff is sort of tied in with cancer prevention and cancer attack. And the microbiome, basically, the colon cancer was a big killer of folks in the old days. They're thinking that that's basically the result of all those years of poor colon health, and so a healthy microbiome is expected to be directly sort of the cause of reduction in colon cancer for people that eat lots of fiber. Like I said, we know that if you eat lots of fiber, you have less colon cancer. Now we're thinking, okay, this is maybe the reason, where the fiber is feeding those bacteria and they're keeping their environment healthy. Outside of colon cancer, I haven't seen any. I would think so, but I'm not. I don't have anything to sort of base that on that I know right off. But I would kind of bet money that a healthy microbiome would probably help reduce cancer throughout the body, but definitely in the colon.
Can we go into any detail on the compounds that help remove senescent cells?
Yeah, quercetin is a supplement that's already available, and it's been shown effective to it. If you just look up senolytics, like new senolytic drugs, some of them are prescription drugs, like an anti-cancer drug. There's, like I said, there's a big development in it that, everybody's thinking that this might be their super drug, because basically it's going to help cure disease with the side effect of living longer. In mice, and again, my studies often don't pan out. When they did this, treated this mice with this, they lived 25% longer than normal mice did.
Yeah, one compound that I've been reading about recently is called sulforaphane, and you find it in leafy greens, broccoli,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah,
It's shown to have an impact on this. But interestingly enough, it's when you cook those grains,
It breaks it down.
It destroys it.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for eating, I guess, raw grains.
Eating raw, and a lot of these, and again, in study after study, you say, oh, well, people that eat, XYZ food that has this in it, we should make a pill out of that stuff. When you do that, it doesn't work. The fat, vitamin E or the omega-3 acid, omega-3 fatty acid and stuff like that. And there's not a correlation. You pop the pill, you don't get the benefit. You eat the fish, and you do. And so on some of these, I'm not sure that will hold true for these, because if you sort of bump up the levels of them, and that chemical is the one that's killing off zombie cells, you may get a benefit from the supplement. So, eating the fresh food, the uncooked food, and then a supplement of that chemical may be a healthy sort of thing. Like I said, they encourage people not to go exercise, not to try to experiment with this, not to go get the cancer drug and start taking it. But like I said, hopefully in 5 or 10 years, maybe something will come from this. And the cool thing is that this is like a recurring treatment. You do it like once a year for a month, and then that would clean off all the cells that acquired over the last month. And then you just let your body do normal from that point on, because again, it has to sort of get them out, but then it has to sort of do its regular thing too. And so it wouldn't be like a drug you'd have to take every day for the rest of your life. You just go for a treatment every year and get a little bit healthier.
Yeah,
after
there's
12
also
months.
been some studies that show